you so much for being here. And, I'm really looking forward to hearing from you later about your own experiences on this. Bala, very, very excited to have you. And I'm, again, looking forward to hearing you and, interacting with you a little later uh, in today. So, what do we have for you today? Today, as you know, we're talking about a very interesting concept. Last week, we talked about Dharma. And this week, we're moving the needle. We're talking about Swadharma. And how do you actually figure out what is Swadharma, and how do we align ourselves to our Swadharma? And is it possible for us to do something by which the co-founders or the initial people who join our journey, not just the co-founders, but the founding team, as it were, whatever you want to call them, co-founder, co-creators. Let's not get into a label, but the point is, how do you create a group of people who will walk with you on the path of the enterprise? Uh, TIE Bangalore this year and Born to Win, we are keen on figuring out how we can address the needs of entrepreneurs at the ideation stage, at the startup stage, at the survival stage, at the scalability stage. And that is really, really the focus of our talks. Very happy to have Sanjay and Bala here because both of them are outstanding. I mean, I'm so excited with the kind of experience that both of them bring, and I'm really looking forward to having them here with us. So, if you remember last week, we explored this whole concept of Dharma. What is it? What is Dharma itself? And we defined Dharma as the law of every being. Okay. If you recall, we said every being, whether it is animate or inanimate, there is a certain law of that particular being. The sun, for instance, has to rise in the east, set in the west. Water has to quench your thirst. A teacher has to teach and share knowledge, and so on and so forth. So every being, there is a particular dharma of that particular being. And that is what we explored last year as dharma. So coming down to Swadharma, okay, what then would become Swadharma? According to us, Swadharma is your own ideal of perfection. Okay. Whatever you feel is your ideal of perfection, can be your call for character. Okay. What makes you happy? What makes you happy? What makes your family happy? Your first circle happy? Your founders, co-founders, the founding team happy? The entire ecosystem happy. Okay. What is it that radiates happiness across the entire system is what is your Swadharma. One of the interesting practices that we brought into this particular edition of Antar Prerana is that we begin with a small reflective practice. So, for about 5 minutes or so. And I'd like you to join me on this particular reflective practice in trying to figure out how I have helped, or how Dipti and I have helped people discover, or, start thinking of what is their Swadharma and what could be the Swadharma of somebody that you want to bring in into your system. So let me begin by requesting you all to close your eyes, and so that there is some amount of quiet reflection that can be done. If there is a piece of paper and a pen next to you, or if you've got your mobile, then at the end of this, maybe you can make some notes and use that or when you explore your own authentic duty, purpose, way of being in the world, whatever you want to call it. So here are 4 aspects of Swadharma that I'd like you to look at. The first aspect, okay, what are those activities that make you feel alive, that make you feel completely engaged, where you lose track of time, in your business that you're doing, in the enterprise that you run, uh, the work that you're doing at this point of time? Is there any particular activity that makes you lose track of time, that makes you feel alive, energized, engaged, completely, brimming with energy? I wanted to think about that. What is it that gets you, getting out of bed early in the morning? Um, Most alive, most engaged. Just think about it. The second aspect of Swadharma is it could be anchored in your innate strengths. Okay. Uh, what are some activities that people reach out to you and say, I think I need your help? Is there a particular kind of thinking? Is there a particular activity that comes so naturally to you that people reach out to you and say that, look, can you help with this? The third aspect, the values part. What principles guide you? Uh, what are those principles that guide you again and again and again? When you have to take a call, when you have to take a decision. And finally, how can all these three, what makes me feel active, energized, alive, my strengths, my principles, how can this help serve a larger need in life, going beyond myself? And that intersection of what makes you feel alive, your strengths, those principles that are dear to you. Is there an intersection there? And can you write it down somewhere? This is your unique design. You can open your eyes. This is your unique purpose. This is your authentic path. Okay. This is your Swadharma. Okay. This is your Swabhava. And this is what will help you go. This is what will help you discover. So discovering your Swadharma is not exactly easy, but it is something that you need to do. And one of the things that I would very seriously advise all of you to do is that, keep reflecting on what we talked about. But more importantly, if you need help, I think it's also important for you to reach out to people who can help you. And it could be anybody in your ecosystem, who genuinely cares for you, or a professional coach. Look at that. So, why is this whole business of Swadharma so important? Last week, we looked at the entire thing about how people follow a role model. Your Swadharma must become the role model for your enterprise. That is something that is very, very important. Most enterprises that we have seen, that we've worked with, that have scaled, that have survived, that have gone beyond just scaling in the survival mode, but have gone into fairly large places, are places where the role model, the Swadharma of the founder and the co-founders have been in complete alignment. This brings me to a very important question. The point is that normally, when we start an enterprise, normally the entrepreneurs that we've interacted with, there's a lot of discussion of what they want to do it and how they want to do it. Okay, what is it? What is the big idea? What is the product? What is the service that they're working on? How are they going to bring this to the market? How are they going to, bring it as a proof of concept? How are they going to make sure that it is going to work? I think it's very important to step back and even ask one more question as to the why. The answer to why becomes extremely, extremely important. Because if we get an answer to why are we doing what we are doing and how we are doing, that becomes a binding force for the enterprise, for the founder, for the co-founder, for the founding team. And that becomes the binding, that becomes the cement, as it were, that binds the different blocks. As a team, you're constantly looking for different talents, you're looking for different skill sets, you're looking for different knowledge paradigms. But what is it? What is the glue that will keep you going together is the answer to the why. And hidden and embedded in this entire issue of your Swadharma is the answer to this question as to why are we doing what we're going to be doing. So the criticality of the why is something which is very, very important. Because if you have the why completely in place, I believe then you're going to create an empowered enterprise. An empowered enterprise is one in which everybody who's working in the team is firing on all cylinders. And that becomes extremely critical for the enterprise. So the goal of the founder, the goal of the founding team is to create an empowered enterprise. And a little later, I'm going to be requesting Bala and Sanjay to share with us examples of empowered enterprises, that they did. But on a very personal note, okay, one of the organizations that I set up, because of a non-alignment of the Swadharma of the founding team, we lost something like 10 to 12 years. And that's a tragedy, really. Okay. That if we are able to do something by which the Swadharma of the group, of the founding team, the founders, and whatever you want to call them, whatever titles you want to give these people, if that is aligned, then you're creating an empowered enterprise that can start creating that joy, creating that happiness all around for us. We've chosen a very interesting shloka for you, and I'd like to share with you that particular shloka for today, because this shloka has some very interesting learnings for us at a deeply practical aspect. So I'm going to request Dipti to help us with the shloka. Dipti?
Yeah. Thank you. Shreyan swadharma vigunaha paradharmat svanushtita swabhavaniyatam karma kurvannapnoti kilvisham. It is better to do one's own dharma, even though imperfectly, than to do another's dharma, even though perfectly. By doing one's innate duties, a person does not incur sin. Talking about dharma, dharma is defined by the role that we play in a situation, or as humans, we play different roles. So our dharma also gets defined by the roles that we play. Now, if you look at this shloka, this context of the shloka is when Arjun wants to leave the battlefield and take sannyasa. And it's at that point of time, Krishna points out to him that your dharma, you are a warrior, and your swadharma is to fight the war and not run away. When Arjun is trying to look at sannyas as the better option, and Krishna points out to him that while it looks better option, actually it will turn out to be very difficult because it is not your swadharma. So swadharma, as Ram said, depends upon our individual character that we are born with, the role that we are playing in the institution. So for example, when you are talking about an entrepreneur, what is an entrepreneur's swadharma? So to me, an entrepreneur's swadharma is threefold. One, the first and the foremost is to be true to your purpose. An entrepreneur has to be focused to the purpose. And when an entrepreneur is trying to do so, you may come across a backseat, you may come across challenges, you may have to take risks. But in spite of all this, if you do not deviate, then you are being focused on your swadharma. The second swadharma or dharma of an entrepreneur to me is developing the culture of ethics and values, integrity, transparency, inclusiveness, helpful, respect. All these are values that need to be imbibed in the organization. And it is the dharma of the entrepreneur to see that the culture of such with values and ethics are developed in the organization. And the third dharma, I believe, is that whatever that we do should contribute towards the greater good of the society. And for this, as Ram very rightly pointed out, he made us do those exercise with the blind, keeping your eyes closed. This can, so nothing but this has to align. It has to align where with our interest, with our core strength, and with the need of the society. So just to give you an example of my own organization, Born to Win. When I was doing this exercise with closed eyes, the one thing that he said about the strength, and I was looking at, yeah, I have been right from my younger days. It has been my desire to help, and I have been doing that knowingly, unknowingly earlier. But yes, it has always been my desire to help people and more or less make a difference in their life. Now, that being my interest in life and the strength of mine, being able to understand human behavior and being a counselor, which got aligned with the need of the corporates in the beginning when we started out with the need of the corporates, where you had people whose confidences were low. They needed more effective and empowered people, and they needed people who are happy to work, who are satisfied, and create a culture of happiness. So all these three met, and that is how Born to Win started. And we have been on this journey for the last 22 years, and we continue to do so. So dharma for me is primarily focusing on, when Ram said, why are we doing what we are doing? And that why uh, can be found out by trying to align these three: interest, need, and the core strength of it. Thank you, Ram.
Thanks, Dipti. So let's just decode this particular shloka that we have for you. Shreyan Swadharma Vigunaha. So we've understood Swadharma. Now, what does Vigunaha mean? I mean, Vigunaha primarily refers to the three gunas, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. That at any point of time, you could have some amount of inefficiencies that can creep in, to our life. We can't only go through, with pure intention. Sometimes we need to be a little selfish, which is Rajas. We need to be a little indolent, which is Tamas, which is fine. Even if they are there, and if we are going to be practicing our own Swadharma with some inefficiencies in life, it's perfectly all right. Now, we need to also understand this concept of Paradharma. What is this whole concept of Paradharma? Paradharma is a very interesting concept. I mean, the shloka is Paradharma Svanushtitat, which means doing somebody else's dharma with perfection. So, what is Paradharma? Now, if you can actually figure out, whatever activity that you're doing, whatever work that you're doing, are you doing it because you're seeking, when you finish that work, are you immediately seeking ratification from somebody? If you are, then that is Paradharma. Okay. If you're seeking an endorsement that you're doing this and you want an instant gratification, it's almost like posting on social media. When we post on social media, we post something and we're constantly worried about whether people have liked this, whether they've really liked this, whether they've commented on this. Now, that is Paradharma. If you're doing a post saying, look, this is what I'm doing because this is who I am and this is what I'm doing, that's fine. But if you're doing it for those likes, for those, for those comments and, for this endorsements, for this ratification, then that is Paradharma. So for a founder and for the founding team, it becomes very, very important to keep this in mind. I think the hidden fact here is that next line which says Swabhava Niyatam Karma, which means we need to figure out what is our Swabhava. We need to figure out what is it that is our innate duty. And that's what I asked you to do when I said close your eyes and figure out what makes you feel alive. That is your Swabhava. What makes you, what makes you full of life? What makes you feel energetic? What makes you feel that this is something that I want to do to serve others? This is something which is uniquely mine. That is your Swabhava. And therefore, it is very, very important to figure this out, especially at the founding stage of a team. And there are times when you need help to sit with somebody, sit with a Sanjay, sit with a Dipti, sit with a Bala, and figure out how can I, how can you help me discover what is my Swabhava, what is the Swabhava of my founding team, and therefore, how can we get that alignment happening? Swabhava is not about your skills or your talents or your experience sets. It is your own innate self, your innate sense. That is what is your Swabhava. So when he says that, look, if you were to perform whatever your innate duties, niyatam karma, basis your Swabhava, then what you're doing is that you are getting a phenomenal alignment into the team. What happens if that is not there? Does it mean that we call it quits? No. I think it's important to recognize that we're all different. But if we're able to figure this out, we will perhaps be in a better position to find out how we can go ahead and create that empowered enterprise on the basis of some unique concepts like this. And this is the whole power. Okay. So, Paradharma, and we as founders, as the founding team, are subject to so many inputs, so much of noise, so much of clutter from the outside. How do you stay true to the cause? How do you stay true to the why we're all there for the enterprise? That is really, really what we're being taught at this point of time. So what I'd like to do is that I'd like to stop sharing this particular shloka and request Sanjay and Bala, as you know, they've extensive experience working with entrepreneurs. Sanjay is doing something extremely exciting, creating, working with organizations at the grassroots, which have some interesting history. So Sanjay, may I begin with you and request you to share with our lovely audience what that journey is all about and how they can benefit from some of your thoughts, Sanjay.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. What I'll do is just make a few opening remarks and then, give some examples. First and foremost, the answer to all these questions is not to be found in books. The answer is within us. We either don't know what questions to ask or we are scared of the answers. And therefore, we don't even ask the question. And, all of this has been a result of my own journey and my own reflection, right? That's the first point. Second, and this is mentioned by both Ram and Dipti, is that, end of the day, there is a role, there's a responsibility, and there's a context within which all of us work. If I'm a CEO, there's a context of a CEO, and therefore there is an overriding objective that I have, namely to build a successful company within the bounds of the Dharma, right? And that's important. Now, how does one know what one's Swadharma is? The exercise that we started off with is important. More than that, it's an iterative process. It takes time. There are no easy answers, and the answers always lie within. And once you go through that iterative process, you will discover what gets your mojo going. In my case, I did this exercise about 25 plus years back, and it was driven by an ad I saw from Emirates Airlines. That ad said, when was the last time you did something for the first time? And that, set off a chain of thought in my head. And, and then I was asking myself, what is it that I am doing? What is it that I've instinctively, intuitively done? And what really gets me excited, like a point you made about, getting out of bed. And what I believe I'm very, very good at. And more importantly, what I suck at, right? What are the things that I'm really bad at? I could do it, but not something that I really want to do, right? And therefore, that journey into myself gave me insight into my own self. In other words, my temperament, my personality, my strengths, and so on, both within myself as well as how I relate to others and contexts and situations. The other thing I learned is that while we talk about roles, responsibility, and context, the context is also a function of the stage of your life that you're at. Okay, and that's another important idea to keep in mind, because one can't decide to all of a sudden drop everything and depart for a sannyasa, knowing fully well that there are certain responsibilities and obligations, and therefore life is all about trade-offs. It's a very Darwinian process, and anyone who says that life is joyful and happy and all of that, it becomes that only if we create it. Otherwise, it's a very cruel, bitter Darwinian world. And, that's the unfortunate or perhaps the real life out there. And therefore, what happens? I've had a situation, I'll give you two examples. I've had an entrepreneur come, and the only time in my entire experience of working with entrepreneurs and startup has a person, a founder, come, made a presentation, very excited, and to raise money and seek mentorship, etc. And at the end, the question asked is, okay, so what do you want? He said, I want you to tell me if I am the right CEO for the company that I founded, right? That shows unbelievable self-awareness, unbelievable confidence in being able to publicly articulate this concern, the fear, the insecurity, and all of it subsequently will manifest itself in behaviors. For example, an insecure boss would never ever delegate. You may have a situation where there's a command and control mechanism. And therefore, the people who join that company are those who are used to taking orders, because all the direction flows from the top. It's not participative. So there is no real teamwork, right? So all this you suddenly start seeing, manifest themselves. The other thing that is very interesting, and we talk about creating an organization that outlasts the founders and outlasts its temporal utility, and that is the culture, right? And there's a saying that I use. A feature is not a product is not a business is not a company, and a company is not an organization. And each of these levels, there's a log scale shift. And therefore, what lasts at the end is an organization, right? Which essentially permeates everything. And therefore, when you say, look, this person is an HP kind of person, or an Infosys kind of person, or a Tata person, without having any experience of working in those companies, there is a certain awareness amongst people of what to expect when they walk in the door, right? And that's a very important thing. The second is, if the chemistry doesn't work, right, the math never will. Therefore, the right kinds of people attract the right kinds of people. There's a saying, in the valley, it used to be A-grade people hire A-grade people, B-grade people hire C-grade people, right? So depending on who you are, you tend to attract that kind of crowd around you. And one last thing I'll say before I stop for now is the DNA of a corporation, of a company, comes from the Swadharma of the founder or the founders. And what does that mean? It means that implicit in the behavior, in the customer, in the product, in the design, in the delivery, there is a certain DNA that manifests itself. For example, just because a D2C brand is attracting great valuation in today's world doesn't mean I'm going to go and start a D2C company, because my dharma is to sit down, do R&D, and build something solid, which will be consumed by another business, not necessarily a consumer. And therefore, there's a fundamental mismatch. And when there's a mismatch between your Swadharma and what you attempt to do by copying somebody or attempting to follow whatever is the latest trend, you arrive at a Dharma Sankata, which is a cognitive dissonance within you, which leads to stress, and it has got its own behavioral manifestations, right? So it's very, very important. For example, how important is integrity to you? How important is hard work? How important is learning? Are you a seeker? And there is no right or wrong, good or bad answer. Why are you an entrepreneur is a very profound question. In my mind, it's the single biggest journey, the most profound journey anyone can take, because it's a journey into yourself. It's a journey of self-discovery, your points of resilience, your ability to handle stress, your ability to handle a situation where there are no or little resources, an amazing uncertainty all around you, right? And therefore, dealing in amidst so much of ambiguity, thriving in chaos, and emerging, because you are imagining a future. That thing is defined. You are creating a future, and what Steve Jobs used to call it a reality distortion field. And it is that kind of passion that you have to be able to bring about inside you, because you have to go through hell, which means amazing amount of resilience, perseverance, dedication, determination, all of those things, right? And all of it flows only if it is consistent with who you are deep down inside. And again, I'm saying you can't do this by reading books. Self-help books are not the way to do it. You have to dive into yourself. The answer is inside. I'll stop.
Thank you, Sanjay. That was wonderful. That was very, very insightful. Bala, may I ask you to weigh in with your thoughts?
Sure. Thanks, Ram. I'm going to break it down between the long corporate experience I've had and the opportunity to work with entrepreneurs. And these are more personal learnings and reflections. For me, Swadharma translates to a sense of purpose. Even a multinational company will talk about it, an Indian company would talk about it. That sense of purpose is just not for a startup, but that sense of purpose is for even large companies and institutions, governments. So there's a sense of purpose, I think, that we all chase. The second thing in chasing that sense of purpose, I think it's also important to be self-aware. And self-awareness is a discovery process. It's not a one time. So even in a husband and wife, it's a discovery process. It's a work in progress relationship. Similarly, when you have founders and co-founders, or I've been in situations where there have been 4 founders, how do you ensure that there is continuous self-discovery amongst the 4 of them, and a sustained focus on the purpose, right? So that's something that I'll take some examples, but that's something I think is important for the Swadharma to be put into action. Now, in the corporate world, in slightly moving away from Bhagavad Gita and how to actually translate this, right? Without getting deeper into the shloka, let me give you some examples. And to the point that Sanjay made, this particular example will also help you relate that how a bunch of entrepreneurs come together, and we assume that they have a sense of purpose. We assume that they have had a process of this self-discovery. They have not only built a product, they have not only built a company, but they've not just built a business, not just built a company, but also built an institution, right? And which the institution lives beyond the founding fathers, right? And the company I like to take here as an example is Asian Paints. The company that I worked first, I worked with them between 90 to 95. Their company started in 1940s when the Britishers were still around. 4 Gujarati entrepreneurs coming together, beating the multinational paint makers in the country. They were all importing and selling. These guys set out to build India's, I would say India's multinational today, right? Uh, and how did the four Guju entrepreneurs stay together? Okay? What was the purpose at that point in time? At that point in time is to put that stamp of India, is to make things in India. Today we talk and scream about make in India, right? A simple thing like a paint was being imported. Why don't we do it in India, right? And stayed true to the purpose of building that company. Also figured out as entrepreneurs they will have a lifetime, and that this organization has to become a large corporate and an institution of the future, right? And therefore, way back in 1965, which is what, about 20-25 years since they started, went into their first batch of IIMs and started recruiting management graduates from the first batch. And today, even today, they do that, right? And what has happened in the bargain? 3 generations of entrepreneurs. The grandfathers started it, then the sons led it. Today, the grandsons are only on the board. They don't day-to-day run the place. Day-to-day running of the place is done by the professionals whom they built over the last 25 years. Right? So it's an institution which has withstood 3 generations and maybe another 3 more generations to come. Right? And you eventually they have become shareholders, and there are operating managers who operate the place or grow the place, right? So this is an awesome example of staying true to your sense of purpose, constant self-discovery. And there is at some point in time, Ram, I think, mentioned about finding a coach. So I think this company was very, very blessed to have a gentleman who was with the family through all these transitions. There was one gentleman called KRC. KRC was through all these transitions and kept the family together. It's not easy to keep 4 families together. Right? Today, if you talk about such contexts, family context, people have moved into writing family constitutions. That's one way of keeping the families and the founders and the groups of people together. So what I want to impress on you as young founders is that your dream is not that product and getting that product out. Yes, that's a short term. Next year, I have to get that product out. I have to generate my $1. But there are people who have very, very, very long term, much beyond my legacy, my time, that I want to build an institution. Yeah? If that long term strength is built, I think all of these things that we're talking about falls into place. Yeah, I'll pause here and come back later on. Yeah.
Fantastic. Vipti, anything that you'd like to share? Any thoughts? You need to unmute.
I just do that. Ram.
Yeah, so I just very kind of understand, and because I practice it myself, is what Sanjay said. It's a journey which is from within, being to getting into your purpose, whether it's like your Asian Paints purpose. It is something that you feel strongly about, and yes, it needs diving into self. And I very strongly believe that reflection, self-reflection, and invariably on a daily basis should be practiced. That is I do it myself, so I that is very strongly inculcated with me.
Fantastic. So let me just let me give you a very practical example of a company that I'm working with right now. This is a destination management company based in Delhi. It's called Tourish, and it's a very, very interesting company. It's a bunch of people who co-founded that company, about 5 of them. And so we're doing something very, very interesting, Sanjay Bala. Every day in the morning between 6 and 7, we get together and get on to Bala, you were talking about finding somebody who's like a sutradhar, finding somebody who can, help you, can be that process guide. So every day between 6 and 7, we talk, we meet, and I'm guiding them in terms of what is the Swadharma, how do you keep expanding. So is that helping? In 3 years' time, that company is already slated to hit 100 crores. Started 3 years ago during COVID, 3 or 4 years ago. And now they're talking of 100 crore turnover. From 3 destinations in India, now they're talking about 3 destinations in India plus another 5 or 6 destinations across the country. So when that alignment, as you said, Sanjay, when that alignment keeps happening on a regular basis, growth is bound to follow. Okay. And there is no question about growth, not happening. And this is just one example of the company that I thought I must share with all of you as to what is happening at this point of time in these difficult times. With all the stuff that's happening in the world, it still is growing at a phenomenal pace. And March 2026 will hit 100 crores, and then we'll keep increasing its numbers, and the team is growing. And the beauty is that we're trying to figure out a way in which every member of the team is completely aligned from a Swadharma perspective. So let me come back to you, Bala, and ask you, a simple question. There are a number of people here who are, startups, and I'm going to ask this question to you, Bala. How important is it for some of us who are listening in today, to have a sutradhar, to have a process guide, to have a coach, to mentor, whatever you call that person, to help you understand this whole aspect of yourself, your reason to be, and to stay aligned, the example that I just gave. Bala?
Yeah, so whether it's large company or small or a startup of today, I believe entrepreneurs are lonely at the top. Right? There's so much that's going on in their head. And currently I work a couple of days with a venture capital fund. I have worked with multiple entrepreneurs. I have seen founders being funded, and we have helped them. Right? In all of these situations, at the end of the day, the entrepreneur is lonely at the top. Or he may have a set of founders as well, co-founders, and the team needs alignment. Even if you say that there is a single founder and there are professional leaders who are part of that team, that team needs alignment. I would say whether you call it sutradhar, coach, or whatever, it's a sort of a mirror that reflects your own thoughts, feelings, emotions about work, about the future of the firm. So that mirror, what I've noticed is a very powerful tool that many founders have used in very different ways. It could be a professional CHRO who you can leverage as a mirror. It could be an outsider who comes in as a consultant, advisor, board member, who could be your mirror. Right? Or you could have frequent retreats and have a person like Ram come and do a process work on how effective the team is, or how aligned the team is, or how misaligned the team is. So being misaligned for me is a silent killer of the energy of the team. Right? So you could do constantly, you can test and try as to how the group is doing. So there are very many ways by which you can create this mirror. And I think the best of the entrepreneurs have leveraged this sutradhar. And that's helped them to reflect, to self-discover, and to be self-aware, which I think is the essence of the whole Swadharma, and not so much technical knowledge or financial acumen or sales skills. Those we can buy tomorrow. But the Swadharma of sense of purpose and a sense of self-awareness guided by the Sutradhar, and whichever form that Sutradhar is, like I explained, I think is a powerful combination for the growth of the firm.
So let me
Thank
just
you,
add
Anand.
to that.
Yes,
Let me
Sanjay.
just add to that. 2 quick points. There's a lot of confusion in the minds of a lot of younger entrepreneurs about bringing in somebody from outside. The question is to do what? Do I need somebody to help me design an HR plan for the company? Somebody to help me do my branding and marketing? Is it somebody to help create processes? Right? All of these are what I would categorize as consulting activities. Okay. And if you go back to the Mahabharata, there's a huge difference between being a consultant, an advisor, and a mentor. Right? And the mentor is actually a superset of the other two. Because because you bring in a consultant when the job is reasonably clear, has a definite timeline and a definite set of outcomes. I'll bring in a consultant and say, look, I'm struggling with trying to figure out what the pay compensation ought to be, or putting my sales incentives in place, those kinds of things. So it's very clear what the goal is and what the job is and who's going to do it and who are the people who are going to be affected and so on. The little grayer area is where advice, where there is really no defined mechanism to determine outcomes. So, for example, a branding strategy, right? It's for a company, each one of us will have our own ideas of what a great branding strategy is, but it's only effected in the field and over time, right? A great brand is built over many years. It's not something that you just launch today and do a quick analytics to determine what the power of a brand, right? So therefore, it's a much more ambiguous than the first example. And it takes somebody a lot of time to understand what the attributes of the company's brand are, who the customers are, what the goals are, and therefore needs a lot more attention. And there's a lot more ambiguity to the whole thing. That's why it's very hard to look at a marketing expense actually as a P&L. In my view, and in view of many others, marketing should actually belong on the balance sheet because it's an asset that gets created. Third is a mentor. A mentor is somebody who the lonely at the top CEO talks to. Who does the CEO talk to when a co-founder is leaving and there's a fight between two founders? Who does the CEO talk to when there is no money in the company and I need to meet payroll in 15 days? Who does the CEO talk to when the number one customer decides to withdraw? Right? All of these are situations where there's enormous turmoil in the mind and soul of the entrepreneur, the founder, who feels the heat. Nobody else will feel that heat except the entrepreneur. Because why? The only entrepreneur is the only one who has skin in the game. All the others will advise and talk and leave. They don't lose anything. It's the entrepreneur who loses. That is why you need a mentor who understands what that entrepreneur is going through, who's been in the trenches and understands, can empathize and guide the entrepreneur to become something that is greater than what he thought he was, right? To achieve greatness. That's the job of the mentor. In other words, unlocking the potential within the person. It is not in giving strategy. Strategy is outside the individual. It is having new awareness, new knowledge, new insight, and new ways of calming oneself down, stilling the mind, seeing the market, the product, the customers, the co-founders as they ought to be seen, given the role, the responsibility, and the context of the CEO entrepreneur. That is the thing.
Fantastic. Very nice. Very interesting. Shreya, can you open up the chat box? But before that, Sanjay, I thought it's very important, the kind of enterprises that NICE is working with right now. If you can share one or two interesting case studies or, interesting examples of some of the organizations that NICE is working with and, is helping scale
Yeah.
as an inspiration for the rest of the team. Shreya, in the meantime, Shreya or Deepal, if you can open up the chat box.
It's open, Ram.
Okay, I'll request the participants, please type your questions. You can address it. I mean, it can be a general question and I will field it to Bala or to Sanjay or to Dipti. Sanjay, in the meantime, please.
Thank you. Very quickly, in the interest of time, NICE stands for Network of Indian Cultural Enterprises. It's a not-for-profit company established 5 years back. So it is exactly, just imagine it is like TIE, but focused on businesses that are building branded for-profit enterprises based on India's cultural assets. 5 sectors: tourism, food and beverage, health and wellness, home decor, and fashion. And since we began, we have got about 1,500 plus entrepreneurs in the network, about 4,500 overall, 60% are women. And therefore, most of these are not businesses that are going to be rocket ships. In fact, all of them. None of them is going to be a rocket ship, right? Because the nature of this business is very, very different from that of the typical startup that all of us are familiar with, right? Because a startup is actually culture agnostic. It's all about analytics. It's about technology. It's about, faster, better, cheaper. Here, it is about building, which is a very different mindset. So you need to be in a different mind space to do this. It's about working with your hands, working with the producers. There is no industrial activity here, right? And therefore, understanding that requires a huge amount of unlearning, right? You're not going to go from zero to unicorn in 3 years, right? You're going to be a good, successful, profitable business and building the brand. For example, you take a company, out here in Bangalore, that all of us know, called Adukade, right? Now, it is basically creating a brand for condiments and food and snack items, right? Now that business takes a huge amount of work. You can't do it sitting behind a computer screen. You have to walk the streets. You must understand customers and all of that. And there are so many of these businesses. Each of them requires enormous understanding of the producer, the artisan, the craftspeople, the production technique, and all of those things, right? And it takes time, it takes effort, and therefore it requires a fundamental shift in the way you think of businesses. And that was the single biggest learning that I had to go through, coming from tech and startups and all of that, to unlearn before you can learn. And that's the only time you start appreciating that there's another big world out there. And therefore, working with all these companies, these brands, every day is a learning experience, and frankly, we are just taking baby steps now. We have, miles to go before we can turn around and say we've done something that, looks remotely successful.
Fantastic. Vijay, Sanjay, many years ago when I was running an ad agency in Bombay, Thermax was a client of ours.
Yeah.
And so was Tetra Pak. Mrs. Leela Poonawala, who's, the legendary Leela. So she used to mentor about 100 women entrepreneurs. In just exactly like what you said, when you talked about Arukale, it came to my mind. And as the ad agency, I had to take my entire creative team to Pune for a holiday, Friday evening, and, they'd have a blast there in Pune. But Saturday, Sunday, we would spend with these tiny entrepreneurs, creating labels for them, creating, pamphlets for them, creating leaflets for them, so that they could actually, take it going. And she did a fantastic job because, when I left Bombay finally, I think we must have worked with about 300 or 400 people in about 4 years' time.
Fantastic.
Creating these little, creating packaging for them, creating, even these are just people who would make pickles and papads and, and a whole host of stuff, just some sewing stuff, some embroidery,
Absolutely.
Maybe we should think of something like that. Sanjay,
Yep.
there's a question that's come saying, Acha, nice. Okay. What is nice? Stephen has a question. If you're not a digital native, but you have a digital transformation plan for your business, does it make sense to work with a mentor who has been there, done it in the physical business world model, and a newbie who sees India at 2050? Wow. So question is, if you're not a digital native, but you have a digital transformation plan, who do you work with? Somebody who's done it in the physical business world or somebody who's seeing 2050, Bala?
Tough one. That's a nice question. Good one. Yeah, why not both, right? At some point in time, it's useful to pick insights and how someone has done a digital transformation in the past from legacy companies. The other is to, I remember the good old days in Unilever, the chairman would get the management trainee to teach the digital tools. Yeah, it was reverse mentoring. So if you walked into some campuses and some kids want to spend time with you in your digital transformation, why not engage them? So I have the benefit of engaging a consultant who brings in the steps of digital transformation for a legacy business. At the same time, I can leverage youngsters who are thinking ahead, who are dreaming up the 2050. Yeah. So leveraging resources that are at both ends of the spectrum would be my suggestion.
Wonderful. Sanjay?
So let me just add to that. What I would like to add is, you can't outsource thinking. Okay. End of the day, it is your business that is going to be digitally transformed. So you need to make sure that you understand enough to be able to ask the right questions and know intuitively about your business, whether the solutions that are being posed, have relevance for your business or not. Right? It's very important to get that sense into yourself. Otherwise, what happens is you'll outsource it to some consultant who will give you a report, and then we'll have a side company that is going to come in and implement everything. And, you're just sitting there unable to figure out because it all sounds gibberish or very complex. So you need to actually understand what you mean by digital transformation in your company.
Sure. I like to just butt in for a minute, Ram. We were building the first lithium-ion plant in the country. We were building the first EV scooter in my last job, right? And the country did not have skill sets and competence on lithium-ion, how to build a lithium-ion battery and cell and plant and whatnot. So, although we as founder and co-founders as a leadership team are clear about wanting to build it, we spent midnight oil learning it from youngsters on what lithium-ion really meant and the nuances of it. And then we set out, and without doing a PhD, I guess many of us got to learn what that was. And sitting in HR, I was asked to go and build the R&D lab for lithium-ion research. Right? So I think, like Sanjay said, you have to be very clear before you get, these are all resources to leverage, but your own learning, your own unlearning and relearning, and your own belief that this transformation can happen, I think that is the driving force that will make it happen.
So Stephen, just to share with you my own example, Stephen, I have a 19-year-old coach who's based in Mysore. And every day in the morning, and that's why Bala, I said after 10 today, between 8:30 to 9, every day in the morning, he's, exposing me to what I should be doing from, transforming my business. So I've chosen, Stephen, the 2050 outlook, saying, I'm going to go with that guy. He's young, completely irreverent. So, he has no patience for my excuses that I give him. And so it's an interesting thing. I think, if, like Sanjay said, I guess it all depends on, what stage is your business and what is the digital transformation plan that you want. But yes, if there is a certain amount of uncertainty that you're facing, then maybe somebody who has been there, done it, can give you that perspective. But if it is more about the digital aspect about it and you're looking for somebody young, which is what I was looking for, I chose to work with this lovely young resource called Arav Pramod, who's based in Mysore. Right, we've got a very interesting question from Vibhor. How can entrepreneurs or founders stay true to their Swadharma when external pressures like targets, profits, investor expectations pull them away from it? And we tend to change the direction of doing business the way we want. Let me start with you, Dipti. How, when you've got so much of external pressures, how do you still stay true to your Swadharma? Yes, Dipti.
Well, just to give you our own example from Born to Win, we have also faced this kind of external pressures of making more profits, increasing, though we have done more than 2 lakh people through our processes. But yes, those pressures have been there. But every time we keep reminding, at least I do, keep reminding myself as why am I in this business? What is the reason I am doing what I'm doing? I think this constant reminder to yourself is very important. It's like it's like your daily mantra. It should be, I'm doing this because this is what I want out of this. This is what I want to do. And if my actions, whatever, at whatever pace it is, if it is leading to that, and if at that point of time, if you are happy, main thing is your own satisfaction that you are doing justice to what you have set out to do. If that is there, then you need not worry about what pressures are coming to you.
Okay. Sanjay?
Look, and I'll speak from a standpoint of entrepreneurs. That's who I know best. When you're facing immense pressure, you've got a board, you have VCs who are stepping on the accelerator wanting growth. You've got customers essentially saying they're not going to pay. You've got a huge challenge on your hands in hiring and so on. And that is really the time when you test yourself and your Swadharma. In other words, is what you thought was your Swadharma, is it actually the Swadharma? How do you test it? Only it's tested in the crucible of immense pressure, temperature, and moisture, right? That's the only time it gets tested. And therefore, and I've seen this firsthand with very many entrepreneurs who just refuse to bend. Okay? They say, fine, I'm going to lose the business, but I'm not going to compromise. Right? But and therefore what happens is, and I've actually have first-hand experience of this from many entrepreneurs, where, for example, there are pressures from the board wanting to grow. Doesn't matter, you blow up money, we just need to grow, right? How do you resist it? There's pressure, let's say, to compromise and pay off people with regard to getting, let's say, speed money. Okay? Refuse to do it. It doesn't matter. Competition is doing it. Doesn't matter. I'm not going to change. Okay? I've actually seen this happen firsthand. And these are the few and far between examples. And therefore, it's very, very important that you actually test it. And, different people have different contexts, different attributes and manifestations. And therefore, it's important to really test it and ask yourself, is this really who I am? Or am I knowingly, quietly, bending or compromising and so on? But the important thing is to be fully aware that you are compromising, right? And that's important because it goes to the first question, why am I an entrepreneur? Is it to make money? Is it for glamour and sex appeal? Is it to transform the world? And so on. It is that Swadharma. And that manifests in very many things, because the time dimension, the impact dimension, the behavior with everybody else changes. You know, the famous quote from Steve Jobs, it very, very inspired me a lot. He says, when I made my first million when I was 21, I made 10 million when I was 24, I made 100 million when I was 27, 28, whatever. But I don't want to be known as the richest guy in the cemetery. I want to be known as the guy who changed the world, right? Now, it is that kind, that driving desire to make change and impact happen is when you test it. Otherwise, the rest of it is, regular corporate speak. People are our greatest assets. We do this, we do that, and so on. How do you test it?
Yeah. Vibhor, my thought on this is that, I mean, in the many organizations that I've been mentoring, been part of, whatever way investing, I've always cautioned people not to, fall for the trap of inflating numbers when they are especially seeking investments, okay, or when they're seeking people to work with them. And I guess the pressures really start after that, Vibhor. That if you're true, and if you're, like I gave you this example of this company in Delhi, Tourist DMC, there's a lot of temptation there to overinflate, to overstate numbers. And I've been telling them, don't, be honest, be true, and saying this is what we will do this year, and be very clear about that. The reason I think, these pressures are directly related to the fact that when you committed to those numbers, you actually moved away from what is honest and what is truth. If you were true to your Swadharma, and if you were true to what you can achieve as a business, then you would not get into this in the first place. Okay. So my own experience in the last 20 years of mentoring organizations, mentoring companies, I've seen, for instance, where despite a lot of pressure, people have refused to inflate numbers, people have refused to inflate scenarios, and have just been completely true to those, to those scenarios, refused to take money from people who said that, it's very easy to do that, and been true to their sense of purpose before, then you'd avoid that. Because once you get into that, then there's just no way but, to be kicked around and, to be under pressure from a bunch of people. Right. Let's get to CV Ramanan. Lovely, wonderful.
Just a quick interruption. I need to log off in exactly 2 minutes.
Sure, Sanjay. Sure. Yeah. Sanjay, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Apologies to everyone, but absolutely.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
CV Ramanan, okay. Any specific case study on the impact of Swadharma on business growth and longevity that can be shared? Bala, any case that you'd like to share amongst the many companies that you are working with on how the companies stuck to their purpose and have, managed to grow? Ola, so many interesting places that you've worked and you've mentored. Bala?
We talked about Asian Paints, and
yes, please. Yes.
Maybe multiple decade sustained Swadharma of the entrepreneurs and the alignment with the professionals as well. I'll take a little more recent, maybe 2 of them. One, which is 25 years old, and many of them may be younger than that here, is Make My Trip. Yeah. So when Deep Kalra set out to do Make My Trip, we were part of the first check writing. I was part of the venture capital fund that wrote this first check. He was an entrepreneur in residence with us at that time. And we sat together and we said we need a bunch of his direct reports to be hired as soon as we funded. Yeah. And we set out to hire them, and we got an expert in travel from Expedia, and he came on board. When someone like Deep Kalra, someone who has a great pedigree, has deep passion about the space, and is very clear what he wants to do. In 6 months' time, he converted one of his direct reports into a co-founder, which was primarily because of the alignment that the co-founder had towards the ambition, the goals, the dream that he shared with Deep, right? And the co-founder continues to be around, and today is on the board. Both of them built the company and whatnot. The point I'm making is there can be sustained, what do you call, Swadharma for us is a sense of purpose, right? And sustained sense of purpose and a self-awareness, and the team being self-aware has got them where they are today, in spite of the dot-com bubble, in spite of 2007 when they were about to go public, when the crash happened. So there are people with that moral compass and character and self-reflection who have stayed through the decades and built something, and longevity has been, proven. Then there is the recent example. I'm working with a VC fund. The fund has been around for 20 odd years and has created multiple brands in this country and multiple B2B tech companies in the country, but still wants to reflect on the next 10 to 20 years. So we are going to raise Fund 5, and each fund, as you may know, all of you may know, is fundraising takes a year and a half. If I were to raise, let's say, $200 million, it takes 6 years to invest that money, and it takes 4 years after that to pay back to the LPs, right? It's easily a 12 to 15-year journey, right? Now, unless otherwise the team is aligned, unless otherwise the team sees a sense of purpose for Fund 5, and to sign up for Fund 5 and to be around for the next 10 to 12 to 15 years, none of us think like that today's youngsters don't think like that, right? But that's the job that we're doing with the team, to discover that common purpose, to discover that alignment, to discover that commitment to the future, right? And to stay together to make it happen, right? Business growth and longevity, for me, I think staying true to your purpose gets you there.
Absolutely.
Right?
Thanks, Bala.
In spite of the ups and downs.
Absolutely. So it's 9 o'clock. Ramanan, the second part of your question, I will answer. Just give me a minute, but it's 9 o'clock. And I think just to be fair to our panelists, we had made a commitment. We've been on this call from 7 in the evening. It's already 9 o'clock. And like Sanjay said, he had to jump into another call. Bala and Dipti, thank you very much for being here on behalf of TiE Bangalore. Truly, truly appreciate your being here. And in case you both would like to leave, we appreciate your time. We have shared your LinkedIn profiles. So if anybody wants to reach out to Bala, Dipti, Sanjay, me, please, on the chat box, you've got the LinkedIn profiles. Do send us a request and we'd be very happy to engage with you in a deeper conversation at that time. Ramanan, your question on any thoughts on Swadharma and Karma at the individual level and the universal level? Absolutely. So if you look at Karma, there is this unfortunate, Karma and Karma is kind of interchanged. But let's refer to this as karma. Karma is performing your work, performing your duty. If you were to perform your karma according to your Swadharma, then you will be performing your karma as a yagna, okay? Which means it is almost something akin to being very, very sacred, But more than the sacred part of the yagna is one of the most process-oriented activities that you can perform, okay? So if you were to perform your karma as a process, in a deeply process-oriented way, right? Then guess what will happen? you will get what we call a certain karma phala. You will get a certain phala at the end of every process. And if there is if that process is excellent, if there is an adherence to that excellence in that process, you will get a certain phala. If you keep reinvesting that phala in the process again, into your business again and again, instead of taking it away, then guess what will happen? That karma phala will keep expanding. And at that point of time, you will get into a concept called karma prabhava. The karma prabhava that you get into is very, very interesting, because that is, you are now expanding your sphere of influence across. Have we seen this happen? Absolutely. Okay. I'll give you just one example here of a company called Sansera that we've been working with for the last 20 years now. Amazing, interesting organization, of how they have over the last 20 years expanded their sphere of influence from one factory that they were in when we started working with them. They're now in 16 locations across the world, including Poland. And they've only been doing this because they're following this particular philosophy, saying, if you perform your karma in a process orientation like a yagna, you get a karma phala, you reinvest the karma phala into the karma that you do, and then you get some more karma phala, and then the karma prabhava that you get keeps expanding and expanding and expanding till you reach a certain level, Bala, Ramanan, that you're doing. And this is true for you at an individual level and even at a universal level. If you were to do the same thing, you will start seeing this happen. Why is this important? Because this ability to continue to keep investing in your work will help you tide over those good and bad times. It's not that Sansera has not had some bad times. Like all businesses, it was hit by some very bad times. But at the same time, this philosophy is what has helped them handle the good and the bad. Well, let's see if we've got any. Yeah, we've got admin. I work as a mechanical engineering consultant from Bangalore, offering engineering services to few customers in India, Europe. As of mine, my Swadharma is to earn for my family. Any suggestions for me? Good, that's good. So start with that as a base. You see, the point is that let's get one thing right. I hope none of you are going away with this feeling that, if you perform your Swadharma, then, you don't have to earn for your family. No, you have to take care of your family. That is something which is very, very important. That's what we'll be doing from the next 2 sessions. Okay. Where we're going to be talking about Artha. So, admin, whatever your name is, let me tell you, that's a damn good thing. So, but try and see how you can get a sense of purpose into this whole activity. Yes, Narendra Singh, thank you very much. Narendra Singh is the mentor for Tourist DMC, the company that I was talking about. Venkatesh says, wonderful to take out time. In fact, I wish my son could have been part. Okay, sure, Venkatesh. Maybe next week you should be able to do it. Karma Phala and Karma Prabha. Thank you. Thank you, Sir Ramanan. I know you're doing a great job in this area, Ramanan. You are an inspiration itself. Raj Kamal. Oh, okay. Thank you so much. No other questions. With that, if there is anybody who would like to unmute and talk, maybe we can do that for another 5 minutes and then we can officially close this session.